I am going to be talking about marijuana today also. As all of you here in this room know, our government is legalizing it very shortly. And everybody has their own opinions on the legalization of marijuana. From a first responder's point of view, from healthcare providers and mental health, we have a completely different point of view because we deal directly with individuals who have issues with substances. So I'd like to get a feel from the room on, as parents, how many of you are concerned for your children with the new legalization of marijuana? Okay. For those of you that aren't, do you consider yourselves well educated on the effects of marijuana on the youth brain? Okay. So, and a lot of people aren't because we don't discuss it. Most of the media attention you're getting on marijuana right now pertains to financial interests, pertains to lowering our criminal court proceedings, pertains to creating jobs. And that's what you're hearing a lot out in the media. From a first responder's point of view, we look at a lot of other things. And considering the fact that youth between the ages of 15 and 24 are the largest users of marijuana, it's a huge concern for us. And because we're the ones dealing with parents who are coming into our offices saying, we don't know what to do, our child's out of control, never was like this, did well in grade school, had great grades, didn't have any discipline problems, but when they got into high school, all of a sudden, they're not listening to us, they're coming in late at night, their grades are dropping, they're losing interest in their activities. And when we ask them, well, are they using marijuana? Because that's what we hear all the time. And they're, well, I don't know, parents are saying. What do you mean you don't know? Marijuana is one of those drugs that they can't hide that they're doing because you can smell it. It's one of those things that gets onto their clothes. It's like cigarettes, right? If a kid's smoking cigarettes, most of you know when your kids are smoking cigarettes because as much perfume as they want to put on or as much breath freshener they want to use, you can still tell that they're using it, and marijuana is worse. So we like to educate parents to understand, and some parents say to us, well, it's just marijuana. At least it's not cocaine or it's not meth. Really? That's what I want you guys to consider tonight when we're talking about it. Because even though we're going to be talking a little bit about the opiate crisis also, we have a good amount of people in our community in Windsor-Essex County area that became opiate users innocently by being prescribed it initially by doctors for injuries and so forth. I consider those innocent victims because they were following what they were told to do. And we are now in the situation we are. But our youth are actually taking them for experimental reasons because they want to get a high. And there's where we're running into the dangers. I'm going to start off with a video first that kind of covers all drug use. It's a great site if any of you want to go on. It's called Drug Free World. And on there they discuss every type of drug, from opiates to synthetics to cocaine to crack to meth, marijuana, alcohol. Yes, that's a drug, by the way. It's the most used drug by youth, with marijuana coming in a quick second. So I'll let you see this video first, and then we'll continue on.
It was around when I was 13 or 14, and you kind of find yourself trying to pick and choose your friends, and also at the same time, you know, you're not really worried about what you want to accomplish at that time, but what people you want to hang out with.
I wanted to fit in.
Wasn't a popular kid in school, and it made me forget about all that.
You know, like, oh yeah, everybody else is doing it, so I'm gonna do it.
Friends were doing it.
I just wanted to jump right in and have fun. I did drugs because it seemed like it was fun.
It was the cool thing to do.
The cool thing to do was to get high, go to parties.
Growing up, you know, you struggling,
man.
Couldn't deal with life.
So I didn't have to deal with life.
I wouldn't listen to anyone.
I was stubborn.
Like as a rebellious thing. This is what the rebel kids were doing.
I just want to see what it was like.
I started experimenting with it.
Experimenting with friends.
First tried it because I was bored.
I was always up to try something new.
You know, when I was growing up, we had this program. It was just say no, just say no.
People are just saying no, but they're not saying why.
It's like telling a person no and then they go do it.
Sparked my interest on drugs.
I knew that they were bad, and I always heard about this addiction, but I didn't know what it meant.
That's probably the #1 reason why I did drugs in the first place. I just didn't know.
Drugs are everywhere. They're in magazines, movies, TV shows, billboards. They're all over the place. In the movies they make it look cool, but in real life it's not cool. It's a serious problem.
And a lot of times they try to glamorize drugs. Like make drug dealers or getting high look cool. But that's only in the movies. In real life, it's a whole different story.
All drugs, whether we're talking about alcohol, marijuana, LSD, these are all essentially poisons.
It would depend on the amount that you take. I mean, a lesser amount might just speed you up, make you feel really active. Stronger amount or stronger dosage would act as a sedative, make you slow, sluggish, tired. And even more amounts, it would kill you. You'd have an overdose.
Every drug works in these stages. It's only really the amount needed to make the effect that's the difference from drug to drug.
A person who's taking drugs, whether for physical pain or just to try and block off any sensations they don't want to feel, those sensations are actually just being pushed away and getting worse and worse.
You're going to be totally numb and just not be able to feel anything.
When you take drugs, the drug goes through your bloodstream, and later on in your life, that drug can, come back up and into a flashback when you use the drug.
You could have taken LSD one day and like a year down the road, it could come back into effect and you can start hallucinating again.
And it's not just LSD, it's every drug. So you can get hit with the effects of a drug even a long time after you stop taking them.
Drugs definitely affect the mind. Everything you see around you is different than what's really going on. You can't hear correctly, see correctly. All of your senses are totally thrown off. Your perception is definitely distorted. Makes it dangerous for you and others because you don't know what's going on. You can't handle things, the way they're supposed to be handled.
Drugs affect your memory so much. It doesn't matter if you're taking them for a long time or just a short period of time.
I know, when I first got, just tried studying and stuff more, I really couldn't concentrate, I couldn't pay attention.
I went from a straight A student to a B- student, C student.
Then I quit going to school and I would get really frustrated.
It's like your brain won't function. You can't think straight. Like everything is messed up.
I never got anything done. I would start on something and I wouldn't finish it. It just didn't happen.
It was just unbearable. I couldn't deal with life at all. I couldn't get a job because I was just out of it completely.
My decisions were based off of, what this drug is telling me to do rather than, what I want to do.
I got them from friends in school.
2 friends.
A friend of mine.
My older brother's friends.
Bunch of girlfriends.
Boyfriend.
Ex-boyfriend.
Older guy.
My dad.
My cousin.
My brother.
My older sister.
Older kids.
My buddy just said, you can do it every once in a while, it'll be no problem.
Told us it was going to be the best thing we've ever done.
You can do it once, you'll be fine.
It's not going to hurt you, really.
It's just a little pick-me-up. You can't get addicted to it.
They said it's not something that you're going to be taking every day. It's just something that you can take when you want to have fun.
Oh, this is going to be a fun time.
It's a fun drug to be on. Makes you easier to talk to girls.
And they said it'll bring you up.
It's gonna make you feel different. You're gonna like it. You're gonna feel good. It's all in your face. That's the thing to do.
All it is taking a drug dealer's word for it.
When you're trying to get someone hooked, you'll say whatever you can to get a customer. You're lying for them to believe you so you can make money.
I would tell people it's fun, makes you energetic, makes you more likable. It's something people want to be around. I tell them whatever they wanted to hear in order to pick that first one up.
When I was 12 years old, I didn't say, hey, I want to be 24 in rehab. I never said that to myself.
but that's what became true, and I never thought about it when I was 13 years old. I started smoking pot.
I was that kid that started out with marijuana and played around with certain party drugs, whatnot, and I told myself specifically that I would never do certain things, cocaine, heroin, and it only took a short time for me to finally accept it and be like, okay, I'll try that.
I had no idea where it would lead me, to almost dying, to stealing, lying, cheating, ruining relationships. It didn't matter.
I didn't get into sports. I didn't get into the clubs. I didn't even go to prom.
It left me with living on the streets without a family, and is that what I set out to be? No, you know what I mean? I was just set out to have a good time at college parties.
The drugs robbed me of all the pleasure of life. The drugs took away my family. The drugs took away my girlfriend, my friends.
I looked back on 5-6 years of my life and saw that all I had done is absolutely just ruined incredible opportunities that I had to have success and hurt all the people around me.
It's not just something that's going to affect tomorrow, it's going to affect forever.
You don't have to find out everything for yourself. You don't have to find out what a car accident experience is like.
Do yourself a favor. Don't fall into the same footsteps as so many other people have.
And realize that you could be the guy living under the bridge shooting heroin.
You might think you won't get like that. None of us ever did, and we wound up in those same shoes.
What I would tell people is just, I would give them my story.
I would tell them my exact story. I would tell them my story.
A story like mine.
Insanity of my story.
Ultimately, it comes down to their own decision making.
You have to get the facts.
Check the statistics.
Find out for yourself.
Find out for yourself.
Find out the actual truth of what these are and what they're going to do to your life.
I would just say to anybody, if you're going to do something, if you're really going to do something, go educate yourself on it beforehand. I think there's a lot of truth in that.
I actually show that to our high school students. There are a series of different videos in regards to each one of those drugs. So if you go to Drug Free World, you can view all of those videos, sit down with your children if you have an opportunity to. And there are also booklets that go with every one of them, and it tells all the side effects, long-term, short-term, what it is, how it's made, everything. And you can download them right from the site. Very informative. You guys as parents, I'm old, I'm 50. My kids are all through high school. But when we were in high school, these drugs weren't necessarily there. We had heroin, I believe. There was a handful of kids that did stuff like that, a little bit of marijuana. Alcohol was the big one in my time. So I don't know how old some of you are here in this room. But the kids nowadays are not facing those simple ones. They're facing synthetic drugs. How many of you know what a synthetic drug is? That's important that you know. These are things that your kids can order online from China. It comes through, it's cheap, and the side effects of these synthetic drugs are the ones that our EMS is called to our scenes to transport to the hospital because they're going off the wall. People are stripping their clothes off, rolling on the ground, overheating, and basically having their bodies go into shock. That's what synthetic drugs do. I'm sure you've heard of bath salts. Well, that's one of those ones that they can order online. There's synthetic marijuana that the kids are ordering online. We're dealing with things like meth, crystal meth, crack, cocaine. The big one right now is fentanyl. And this originated to help patients who had lost their tolerance for oxys and Percocets that weren't working anymore. And they came in patches. Well, when we talk about fentanyl now, although the patches are out there, we're talking about the one that's being made in Mexico and China. That's what's being put into all the other drugs, more particularly heroin, cocaine, and we're starting to see it in marijuana. So if some of you have the philosophy that my child's just using marijuana, well, they don't know where they're buying it from. So even though we're legalizing it, they're still going to have their hands, since they're the biggest market, they can't walk into the LCBO that's going to be selling it and get it. So either they're going to be taking it from you if you're purchasing it yourself, or they're going to be getting it from friends' houses whose parents have purchased it, or older brothers and sisters. But if not, they're still going to be buying it on the street, and they take the chance of it being laced with fentanyl. And it only takes a little grain, by the way, to kill someone. We have the other drug out there right now called carfentanil. Carfentanil, Just to put it in perspective for you, heroin is really bad. Heroin is stronger than morphine. When we have fentanyl that's 60% stronger than heroin, and we have carfentanil that's 100 times stronger than fentanyl. Carfentanil is an elephant tranquilizer. And as I put it in perspective, even for my grade 6 students, picture the size of an elephant and picture the size of you. We're talking about a small, tiny grain that will instantly kill you. If some of you don't know how fentanyl works, and any of the opiates, but fentanyl in particular and carfentanil, it suppresses the central nervous system. Central nervous system, that's why we talk about pain management, but the central nervous system also controls our breathing. So when it shuts down the central nervous system, it shuts down your ability to breathe, hence why people are overdosing. When we use naloxone, what it does is it reverses temporarily the ability and allows the person to gain their breathing back. Okay, so if you didn't understand how fentanyl works, when it's an overdose, that's what we're talking about, and that's why we're seeing the overdoses. So you can imagine a child who is smoking a joint and it's laced with fentanyl, and their body's not used to it. It'd be like if you've never taken any pain medication and your doctor didn't just give you oxys or Percocets, he went right to fentanyl. Well, you would OD because your body hasn't learned to tolerate that high level of a painkiller. You have to be brought up, even when you're starting an oxy, start at 10s and then 20s and then 40s and then 80s. And then eventually your body it's not affected by those drugs anymore. And then you graduate to the fentanyl, all right, the stronger drugs. But we got kids that have no drugs in their system that's a pain-killing effect, and they're ingesting the fentanyl without knowledge of that. And then they could be standing here talking to you. We've had officers explain, I could be standing here talking to you right now, or your son could be talking to you or your daughter, and then all of a sudden just drop to the ground. That's how quick it hits. And you won't know what happened. And even if you got them to talk to you and they said, I just had a joint, you still wouldn't know whether or not, and you probably just assume it was a bad reaction to the marijuana. It's not. The other thing they're doing is they're making what we call fake 80s. And I'm sure you've heard that out in the media in the last month or so, because they actually found Windsor police did a warrant on a residence, and they had what we call fake 80s. And it's fentanyl pills made to look like oxy pills, because oxys are 80s. And what happens is there's hot spots in those pills, so people know that they're taking fentanyl, but they're getting a super high dose of it, and then they're ending up with the overdoses. So very dangerous for your kids, very dangerous for adults, very dangerous for first responders especially. We carry naloxone for us, because if we come in contact with someone and there's a residue, it's absorbed through the skin, right? And you can breathe it in. So we're not talking about the patches here, we're talking about the actual powder form. And if we even inhale it or get it on our skin, it can kill us instantly. That's how powerful this stuff is. So can you picture your child getting something from a dealer on the street, whether it be marijuana or otherwise? What kind of Russian roulette they're playing with their lives? So even though we're legalizing marijuana as a country, even though our government believes that by legalizing it, we are somehow taking it out of the hands of youth, I'm going to tell you something I teach my grade 6s. The 4 most used drugs, we have alcohol, which is number 1. We have cigarettes, which is number 2. We have inhalants, which is number 3. And inhalants are those common things you have in your house. And the 4th drug that they're using is prescription drugs. Where are all 4 of those found? They're in your house. And they're the most used drugs by youth. Why? Because they're accessible. And now we are legalizing marijuana, which now becomes number 5. If you don't think we have a problem right now with our youth, who are the biggest users of marijuana between the ages of 15 and 24, and now we are going to add that to that list, it becomes more accessible. We're not taking it out of the hands of youth, we're putting it in their hands. So please consider that when you want to take the laissez-faire attitude that it's just marijuana. One of the things you have to understand, the difference between you as adults smoking marijuana or using marijuana and a child, is their brain's not developed until 25. Another interesting statistic to tell you is when the government was considering legalizing it, they consulted with Health Canada. Health Canada told them their recommendation was to not legalize it for anybody under the age of 25. If some of you didn't understand why Health Canada was doing that, that's because that's when the frontal lobe, which is all the decision-making, processing, memory, is developing. And 25 is the key age when that development is finished. But our government's decided 18's much better. And I'm not going to tell you why. I have my own opinions why, but I'd like you to think about why we're moving it at 18, even though Ontario is going to make it at 19, when our youth brains aren't developing full. And we're pre-programming these youth's brains to require substances in order to deal. We have a lot of youth in our communities that are struggling with anxiety, depression, and we've never seen before. And people are wondering, why are our youth? People have a philosophy, it's because they're the helicopter children, right? We have parents are doing everything for them. They don't have any coping skills. Well, the other reason is, and I believe as a first responder, is because our kids are using drugs more than they've ever used before. So it's causing some of the side effects we're seeing with children. They're self-medicating. They're using these drugs to fit in. You heard in the video the reasons why youth use drugs. Now more than ever. We're hearing statistics that I don't know where they've got them from and who they interviewed, but they said youth are using marijuana. About 20% of youth in high schools are using marijuana, and I'm going to tell you that's a lot higher. And I can tell you that because I've had kids that have gone through the system. And when I say it's 20%, they're laughing at me going, no, it's about 80. So where they're doing their surveys, whether the kids are answering the questions, honestly, I don't know. But if you have a youth, any of you have children in high school right now, ask them. Just point blank. Is it easy to get marijuana at school? Watch their answer. Because they will be honest with you. They'll tell you they're not using, but they know if they needed it, they could get it. I had 3 boys that went through high school. And that's most of their friends, if not all of them, except for them. They knew a majority of their friends tried it or used it on a regular basis. Now, I don't know about you as parents, and I like to speak more from a parent's perspective than a police officer's perspective, but I want my child to have the best opportunity to thrive and do well. And drugs are not that answer. I would love to see each one of you take the opportunity to go into drug-free world. Go on that site. Go through the things yourself. Educate yourself. That gentleman at the end, educate yourself. Because that's what's going to help you understand what your kids are facing. And when your kids do want to come and talk to you, you'll be up on what's there. You can also sit down with your child and show them these videos. Go through the booklets. Learn as much as you can. I can tell you, probably in another 6 months to a year, there's going to be another new drug out there. We're going to be behind. It's like technology. We no sooner catch up to what's there, and then we're way behind again. Just to give you, some of you may not know, in marijuana, this is also what we're seeing in our kids. And I'm putting it in perspective for you. We always compare marijuana to what we saw in the 1960s. It didn't hurt them, so it must not be bad. In the 1960s, when it was really a big thing, with Woodstock and so forth, levels of THC were between 1% and 3%. There was a second drug in there called CBD, which counteracted any psychotic effects that the THC would cause. Marijuana plant's a very interesting plant. It can't produce, other than at those levels, once you start increasing THC, CBD goes down. Once you increase CBD, THC goes down. The plant cannot produce both at the same level except at the low 1% to 3%. Youth are not smoking 3% THC these days. Youth are smoking anywhere between 8 to 25. That's what they're smoking. That's why we're seeing these psychotic mental health issues that we are in our hospitals. On top of that, there's a new form of marijuana that they use the hash oil for. It's called dab or shatter, where they're taking the hash oil, using butane and alcohol, and extracting the pure THC until it's in a form of like a honey, which we call dab, and when that solidifies, it's called shatter. And when it's ingested, the THC levels are between 50 and 90%. Now, that scares me, just thinking about the psychotic effects. And there's been some individuals who have been lifelong users of marijuana who have tried it and will never touch it again because of the trip it sent them on. So can you imagine if your youth, your child, gets their hands on that? I was just talking to Dr. Basker of Windsor Regional Hospital today, and I asked, have you seen any cases of the shatter or dabbing coming through? He says, yep, dealing with one youth right now. It's been over a week and we still don't have him down out of the psychotic episode. So as soon as we figure out something, the youth and dealers are finding something more to use. You need to educate yourself on these things, parents. Because when your kids come to you you need to have some of those answers, or at least show them that you understand. The other thing is, and I teach all my grade 6s this because I do the VIP program, and I don't give them any homework except that whatever I teach them during the day, they need to go home in that evening and talk to their parents. And I don't know how old your child is, but if they're right around that age, start engaging them in conversation now. Have that open dialogue with them. And that's why I'm saying educate yourself on this. So you could sit down and say, hey, I just read up on this, kind of go through it. Educate them. No different than me sitting in the classroom when I'm teaching them. Be open about it. And don't be alarmed when they're talking to you, because if they are talking to you, that's a good thing. It's when they stop talking to you that you have a problem. The schools are a little hesitant on us coming forward because they're afraid parents are going to go, well, I don't want my child knowing that. Well, when it comes to drugs, yes, you do want them knowing it, because they need to understand. You can't just say to them, don't do it, right? We have the whole campaign over the states, just say no. It doesn't work. A child needs to know why, right? How many, you've known them since they were little and can talk. What's the first words out of the mouth? But why? But why? You need to explain to them why they shouldn't. The schools were a little hesitant on us coming in. They had to review everything we were going to present, including some of our guest speakers. And we approached it that this is an information. And the only way somebody can make a logical decision is knowing all the facts. You don't just give them bits and pieces, right? Right now, just like you as parents, you're given bits and pieces about marijuana. So some of you have this idea that it's not harmful. If the government's approving and legalizing it, must not be bad. They told us that about cigarettes too, and what did we learn? When it first came out, they told you cigarettes, they freshen your breath, they taste good. I could show you old commercials. I actually teach it to my grade 6 that way. We pull up all these old commercials from 1920, 1930 when they were promoting it. They send them off free to people in the war. World War I, World War II, 4 out of 5 soldiers came back addicted to it. Then in 1953, the brakes went on. Scientists and doctors were discovering a direct correlation between lung cancer and cigarette smoking. Oh, and you don't think the cigarette companies knew? Of course they did. That's why there's been multi-billion-dollar lawsuits filed against cigarette companies where individuals are winning because of those false ads. And it took 30 more years for government to step up and start doing all of the preventative measures, which is the advertisements in the cigarettes, not allowing advertisements on TV, not allowing people to smoke in public places, so on and so forth. But it's taken over 100 years to go from when it started to where we are now from false advertising, because it was about the almighty dollar in the very beginning. So that's all I want to do, is give you some food for thought. Don't always believe everything you hear. Do your own research on it. Get yourself educated on it, because just everybody can make it sound good. It's going to create jobs. It's going to create tax dollars. Companies are going to make billions of dollars. Well, if you ever understand anything about government, you understand that business and government work hand in hand. Learn that in Political Science University 101, okay? So don't be fooled by that. But get yourself educated and make sure your kids are too. We'll do our job out of schools, but you guys have to do yours too. In today's day and age, with all the rights of individuals, it's a very discussed topic. And with youth nowadays, they know their rights. And you have to be a pretty brave parent and have an open conversation with your child if you suspect that happening. If you can get your child to do the drug testing, if you suspect that there's some problems, good for you. But some of you who have teenagers know that it's not always easy to get your teenager to do what you want them to do. And they will spew the law to you. They're very well educated, better than you are. And I know that because we're told that as police officers all the time. We're told what we can do and can't do. So parents, you have an extra challenge there ahead of you. If you can get them, perfect. But I say go before that. Make sure they're not using. Get yourself educated. Get them educated. Let us educate them. Don't be worried about what we're going to tell them, because we don't want to deal with them anymore. We don't want you parents coming into us and saying, we've lost control of our child, and say, what do we do now? Because once they're addicted, and yes, marijuana is addictive, by the way. Don't let anybody tell you it's not. It's like alcohol, right? You or I can have one drink and we're fine, and there's other individuals that become alcoholics. It's why they use, right? So if you're just using it because, you know, you want a social event and you're just going to walk around with a wine glass, no, you're not an alcoholic. But if you have a stressful day at work every day and you come home and you start drinking and you need that every time to deal with that stress, and it increases as we go because our bodies learn to tolerate it, marijuana works exactly the same way. So if we've got kids using it to self-medicate themselves, to fit in, and a lot of them, if you talk to them, they're not sociable, and the only way they can be is if they drink or they use marijuana, because then they feel like they actually fit in, that their defenses are down and they're more relaxed. Well, if you need that every time, or before you go into an exam, oh, if I do smoke a joint, it relaxes me, I can do it. So now every time you have an exam, you need to have that joint, and then it just keeps multiplying. And so it is very addictive for the reason why you use it. It's no different than alcohol in the same pretext, that it's the habitual use. Because you got some people right now, the big marijuana users, just say, I don't understand what the big deal is. I've been smoking it for 40 years. I'm not addicted to it. I look at them, really? You've been using it for 40 years. What if I took it away from you? That's why you guys all voted it in, because you can't do without it. You just want to use it illegally, but you've been using it for 40 years and you're not addicted to it. So there's, it's just the way you want to look at things, right? Youth have a higher susceptibility to addiction because their brains are developing. We talk about neuron pathways in the brain, in the frontal lobe area, and it's directly affecting the way they're building. We would never give a 2-year-old a glass of alcohol. We would never give an 8-year-old a bottle of beer or a bottle of wine. And I asked the kids, and they'll say, because the child's developing, I said, well, then why are we giving an 18-year-old marijuana when I've already told you the brain's not developed till it's 25? And then all of a sudden they sit back and go, oh, I guess that makes sense. But society says it's okay because we've been doing it forever. And how many alcoholics do we have in our society? And marijuana, nobody's tracking because it's been illegal. They say nobody's died from marijuana. How do you know? We haven't been tracking it. Nobody's going to admit it. You're going to go into the OR. Yeah, or cocaine, or any of the illegal drugs. Yeah, I've been doing cocaine. That's why I was in this car accident, although Diane will tell you a little bit when she comes up here. It'll be interesting over the next 30 years what we're going to discover. There may be some good things. Maybe some of the things they're telling you about healing cancer or whatever else might be true. But some of the other things they're telling you, just like cigarettes, aren't true. We'll wait and see. But I would prefer to encourage children not to use and not to develop those neuron paths in their brains to depend on it. Thank you very much.